long time ago, my grandfather, Harry John Score, fired up my imagination and instilled in me a deep love for history with countless stories of his past. Now, I am a grandfather with stories of my own to share with my granddaughter, Hannah. Oh, and now, with the help of the World Wide Web, I can share them with you. Simple little tales of life from years and years ago. Name any family farm in the known universe, and I can pretty much guarantee every field, pond, hill, woodlot, swamp, shed, barn, and wagon road on that farm has a name. Why am I so sure of that? Simple. Go get that load of hay out of that field. What field? There's 12 fields. Hurry, Grandma fell in the pond and she can't swim. What pond? There's 4. Sure, that's a little too simplistic and way too dramatic, but you ought to get the point. After all, little boy Blue needs to know exactly where to go to blow his horn. And don't tell me you never heard of that nursery rhyme. Anyway, back in the day on the Score farm, everything had a name. Well, mostly everything. These names ranged from simple to innocuous to bordering on ridiculous, but whenever my father or grandfather told me to go someplace on the farm, I knew exactly where to go because it had a name, sort of. We had 2 equipment sheds. One was built of wood, one was built of tin. Way too obviously, they were named Woodshed and Tin Shed. We had 2 chicken coops. One was big, one was little. You can guess what we named them. The main barn had 2 lofts, or as we called them, mows, one for hay, one for straw. You can guess their titles too. We had 2 garages. One, an older, smaller garage, was down by the farmhouse. Well, that didn't have a name other than the garage. The other one, newer and larger, was named Harry's Garage because it was built next to my grandfather's house on a hill he named Snob Hill to distinguish it from Fox Hill, the other prominent hill on the farm. There was a third hill, but we never gave it a name. It didn't need one because if we were referring to a hill that wasn't Snob Hill or Fox Hill, it had to be that hill. We had 2 wooden silos initially. Never gave them names. When we had to refer to either, it was generally whatever one we were currently working out of. Eventually, we tore them down and replaced them with one larger cement silo. One of anything didn't need a name on the farm. Thank God I had 3 brothers. We started out with one pond. That was the horseshoe pond, or the big pond, the subject of episode 9. It didn't have a name, nor did it need one, until 1956 when we dug another pond just across Mills Road from the farmhouse. Would you believe we named that one the pond across the road? 2 more ponds came later. The third was named the Heart-Shaped Pond, for obvious reasons. The fourth was never named, for the same reason as the non-naming of that third hill. We had 2 swamps. One was called the Big Swamp, or the swamp across the road, and the other was called the Huckleberry Swamp. Don't tell me you can't understand why. Now, the fields. Like everything else on the farm, naming new fields didn't require much deep thought or soul-searching. Starting with the only field we had across Mills Road, we appropriately named it the field across the road. Coming back across Mills Road, the field by Harry's house got the name the field by Harry's house. Going down the hill, from there to the west, across from the sheep pasture, guess what we named that, there was a field 14 acres in size that we named the 14-acre field. Just south of that was a field behind the pond. Yep, its name was the field behind the pond. Just south of that was a field of 10 acres. Do I need to tell you that name? Just off the southeast corner of that field, there were 2 fields on that third hill with no name. Well, here it gets a little complicated. if you can consider this change-up complicated. Along the east side of these two fields was an old abandoned apple orchard, owned by a man named Sam Gonick. These two fields were named collectively the Fields by Gonick's Orchard. Which field being referred to at any given time was determined strictly by nuance. Just south of these fields, in the extreme southeast corner of the farm, with just one corner bordering on the house where the Marcy family lived, was the field we named the Field by Marcy's. Just to the west of that field was a smaller field we named the Field by Warner's Barns, because bordering that field to the south was Warner's Barns. Sometime in the 60s, we had to change that name because the Warner family moved out and the Kiley family moved in. Now, just to the west of those barns was the smallest field on the farm. Guess what we called that one? Nope, you're wrong. We called it the Odd-Shaped Field because it was, well, yes, odd-shaped. Now, down across the swamp to the west, that swamp never had a name because it was so big and so dense we never had much to do with it, was the largest field on the farm. All right, yes, that we called the Big Field. To the north of that, on the other side of the big woods, at least they were larger than the little woods just across a swale to the east, was Fox Hill. Remember that? On top of Fox Hill was a field. No, we did not name it the Field on Fox Hill. By then, this naming thing was getting a bit tedious, so we just called it Fox Hill. Well, that's it, except for the roads. They were the road to Fox Hill, the road along Gonick's Orchard, and the road to the big field. You can figure out where they were. Now, there was a fourth road that went from north to south through the center of the farm. We rarely used it and let the southern half of it grow in trees and brush. The northern end disappeared and became part of fields. Ironically, that road had a little history to it. According to some, it was around for centuries, starting out as a Native American trail and then used by settlers in colonial times. I gave that history lesson to my old pal Paul Henke when Rosedale Nurseries took over in 2001. To honor the past, we reopened that road and extended it to its full length through the farm. Henke christened it the Revolutionary War Road. Like I said about him in episode 8, he talks too much. That's too much of a mouthful for me. I just called it that road. Now, speaking of Rosedale, the following year, 2002, we had to set up the once dairy farm into a treat farm. The whole naming thing from the past had to go away. Well, not the whole thing. The main barn was purposely burned down for some stupid reason before Rosedale got the place. The little chicken house was gone. The farmhouse, garage, big chicken house, everything on Snob Hill and everything across the road became separate properties. The woodshed and tin shed were still there. The horseshoe pond and heart-shaped pond were still there. All the fields were still there, but they all were renamed sections with the letters I through K for inventory purposes. Yeah, it really didn't have that family farm feeling to it anymore. But Paul Henke and I, both being the farm kids we were, still call most everything by the original names. Even the nursery crew will occasionally do it in Spanish. And there's one more thing. Henke and I had the responsibility of designating which field got which letter. Of course, it made sense to start at one end as Section A and move it along in alphabetical order. However, we made sure Fox Hill was the last in line so it would get the letter K. Fox Hill was the second highest point on the farm. Oh, come on, you've got to know where we were going with this. We even divided it into two subsections. The bottom was K1 and the top was K2. We thought it was a mountain of an idea. Yeah, now even that was years and years ago.